For me, it's an opportunity to sincerely investigate the nature of self and reality, attempting to answer the question, what the hell is going on in this experience of life, being human? And so I'm going to say some things. And the overall intent is to expose something that you already know, but it just terrifies you. And allow this to come to the surface so you see that you don't need to be terrified of it. That it's actually a truth that's there to support you rather than threaten you. And if we investigate the human experience, being you, and we were to ask, okay, so what's the issue? What's the problem? And the only thing that you're ultimately going to say in some way or another is, I'm afraid. Afraid of what? And the beauty of this is that it's the same for every human being. That if you look at any perceived problem that you might have, the only thing it points to is a belief that you're not enough. That there's something about the self that's inadequate, missing something, distant. And this creates an internal pain that we might call separation, that shows itself as an agitation in our everyday life. Stress, anxiety, worry. And we can tell 1,000 different stories about this internal sense of separation, but yet we're always feeling the same pain, the same tension. Whether you're afraid someone doesn't like you, whether you're afraid something's not going to work out, it always comes back to this fundamental belief that it's possible that you're separate from what you want most. And so I invite you to just recognize the simplicity of this for a moment. That the real issue, the disturbance that we're trying to heal, isn't anything out there. It's not anything in our lives. It's that internal sense of perceived inadequacy that feels like you're not enough, that keeps showing itself over and over and over again, some form of self-rejection. And one thing you'll notice about any sort of spiritual practice is that its intent is to bring you back to the present moment, to connect with something. And what you connect with in that present moment is what you might call a sense of wholeness. You calm down and you realize, oh, all is well. Everything's fine. And then you go back out into crazy and feel separate again. You see, what we're looking to heal is the way we see ourselves. And really see this, because regardless of whatever the condition, the circumstance, whether it's a disease, the only real issue is the way you see yourself in that circumstance. It's like if you get the flu, it's not a problem. But if you think the flu is in the way of you being you, then the flu is a problem. And so the real healing in the flu isn't getting rid of the flu. It's chilling out while the flu is happening. Recognizing that the flu isn't the disturbance. The disturbance is the way that you see yourself having the flu. Pretty simple, yeah? Because for some, having the flu is the perfect excuse to take a week off and watch Netflix.
Yeah.
Right? It's a blessing. Oh, thank God, I don't have to do shit anymore. And so I invite you to see this, that what you experience as you go through life, whether it's the flu or this condition or that condition, you're not actually experiencing that something. You're experiencing the way that you see it. This is why two people can go through the exact same experience, but one has hell and the other has heaven. Because you experience the way that you perceive. And the way that you will always perceive is a reflection of how you perceive you. You notice this? If you think you have a problem, you will look out into the world and see problems. If you're content, if you're at peace with yourself, you look out and you see peace. It's like if you wake up in the morning and you go outside and you see a tree and you say, man, fuck that tree. I don't like that tree. It's not the tree. You're experiencing yourself. This is the cosmic reflection. Welcome. Do you recognize this? That in order for you to be pissed off at anything, you have to first be pissed off at yourself? Can we just be honest about that? This is what I call the one relationship. In that there's only one relationship that's real. And that's the relationship between you and you. And all of your perceived external relationships are simply reflecting back to you the state of your relationship with yourself. And this is relationship with everything. People, places, things, money. The way you dance with it shows you how you dance with you. That's really good news. Because instead of thinking I have to go out and fix all of these relationships, I can go to the source. I can go to where they all come from. And when you heal the relationship with yourself, every single relationship transforms. But the bad news is nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to really look at the relationship you have with yourself. It seems like it's much easier to just blame and say, I feel like shit because of that. Because of the world. Because of what they said. Because of what they did. I don't want to have to look and see that I am denying myself. Let's look at the sincerity of this, of what's desired in the relationship game. In some way, the ultimate fantasy of a relationship says, I want to be with someone who accepts me as I am. I want to be with someone who doesn't control me and doesn't make love conditional. That says, I'll love you if. Don't do this because it makes me look bad. Don't be you. Don't be sad because it makes me uncomfortable. Anybody want to be in a relationship like that? No. You want to be in a relationship where you can completely collapse into the rawness of you and still be seen for what you are. To where you are totally allowed to be authentic. Don't have to hide, don't have to pretend. No effort. Just the relaxation of being what you are. You see, because love that is unconditional has no condition for love. It sees the realness. And we have to look at the relationship we have with ourselves. Is that the kind of relationship you want to be in? The way that you might talk to yourself? Look at this. It's kind of cute. You see, oftentimes what we do is we're waiting for something out there to come rescue us. It's like, oh man, I just want to fall in love with someone so I can hide behind them and don't have to see my own relationship with myself. I want somebody else to love me because I'm not doing a very good job. And you see, every time you do that, it results in some sort of heartbreak because you're relying on a love that's outside of you. And here's the funny thing. Since love at its essence is what you want most, if you look outside of yourself for it, you become a prisoner. Because as soon as you find it outside of yourself, now you can't be yourself because you might lose that love. So you have to maintain in some sort of box to make sure you don't lose that. Which means you can't actually enjoy it. It's like the disaster of, if you get it, now you're afraid to lose it, and so you can't actually enjoy it. This is the disaster in the human experience with looking for something. Because you think it has something that you need. I'm just ruining the game of being human. But it's important. Because if we don't see this, we will spend our entire lives looking for something and never finding it, always being afraid of losing it. And then one day waking up and realizing that you had it the whole damn time. Because when we say, man, I just want someone to come into my life and love me forever and never leave, that's you, silly. You can count on that. You see, nothing else is reliable. As much as you want to rely, it's unknown. And if you rely on it, you'll restrict it and squeeze it to death and not enjoy it. This is the coming to terms with the truth. That the love you're looking for is not something you find. It's something that you are, that's allowed to flow, allowed to be shared. You are an instrument of love, waiting to be played. In the spiritual expedition is seeing the ways that you deny that love, where you withhold that love. Because when you withhold love, when you don't allow it to flow, who feels that? You do. Who are you withholding it from? You. See, this is a funny thing about the human experience, is that when you hate someone, you think you're actually hating someone. But yet you're the one with that feeling. You're the one that feels separate. You're the one that feels denied. And the opportunity in this life, in the same way that when you see clearly what you are, you realize the innocent confusion that says, actually, this is totally lovable. This is totally innocent. There is nothing wrong with me. I just see something wrong with me. It's like going to a forest, and when you step back from a distance and you see the whole thing, you say, oh my God, that's beautiful. Wow, nature. Look at that. It's glorious. And then you go for a walk through that forest and you see absolute chaos. Leaves falling, making a mess. Bugs fighting with each other. Dead animals stinking up the place. Lots of things that you could argue. You could say, oh, those trees are crooked, they're doing it wrong. Dead animals shouldn't smell, that's wrong. But you see, in order for the beauty to be the beauty, everything in the forest has to be exactly what it is, regardless of your argument. But you're free to see argument. You're free to look for argument. But just like in the one relationship, the argument you see out there is an argument you have with yourself. You don't actually have an argument with the forest. You get to see how you see. Have you ever noticed that it seems like life doesn't care about your argument? I mean, really. Life doesn't care about your argument. Because life knows it's just a misunderstanding. When you argue with the falling leaves, you don't understand the role they play. Why they're required. When you argue with the freeze of winter, you don't understand the role it plays that allows for the spring. And so the real opportunity of waking up to not only what you are, but what life is seeing the whole damn picture. Releasing your grip on the argument that wants to withhold the flow of love. And say, okay, I'm open to see this. Because you see the things like in our lives that we withhold love to, we're not willing to see them. They scare us. And they scare us in lots of different ways, but what it comes down to, and hear me gently here, is they threaten your imaginary sense of self-importance. That you're right and life is wrong. That it should be this and not that. They threaten the idea that you know something. But I invite you to get really honest and ask yourself, what do you really know? I mean, because if we're going to investigate the nature of what's true, what's true? What's true? Not what do you think, not what do you hope, not what do you want, not what do you believe. What do you know? Not much, huh? What should happen tomorrow? Don't know. Who's right and who's wrong? Don't really know. What does this mean? Don't know. You see, your only option is to come back to the present moment. And to rest in the stillness that can admit you don't know what you're doing. Because it's only in this space where life is allowed to move through you. Do you notice that the more you think you know, the more anxious you become? The more you think you know how tomorrow should be, the more worried you are about tomorrow. And all the while, you miss the joy of what's actually happening. Because we think we know how tomorrow should be. I'm just rambling, by the way. From my experience, the most profound thing in life is the discovery of a deeper love. Which can be said as a deeper acceptance for all things, a deeper peace, sense of contentment, gratitude. It's the internal experience of all things becoming whole, where you finally get to relax and say, thank you. You know, you can't buy that. No one can give that to you. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the only thing we actually want. Think about it. If you ask your mind, okay, mind, what do you want? And it gives you a list of 100 things. Why? So I can relax. So I can feel whole. So I can be with gratitude. So I can know all is well. Do you see that? That's what the human being is looking for. It's the only thing looking for wholeness. But for some reason we think we're going to find it out there in the world. This becomes much easier when you admit to yourself that you don't actually want that thing. What you want is what you think it will give you internally. And so you can stop fooling yourself because you're honest with yourself. Because once again, if you believe that that thing will give you yourself, you become its prisoner. Now, this deepening of love, surely you've experienced this in some way where life has opened you up. Do you notice that that happens by not getting what you want? Things not going the way you think they should? Bringing about maybe a sense of humility, a softness, bringing you back to that place of I don't know. Through seeing what you're afraid of and then moving through it, even though you're afraid. through life being life. And the comedy in this is, at least for myself, if I ask my mind what's best for me, it's to avoid all those things. Avoid what I'm afraid of. What I think is best is let my plans work out. That things go how I think they should go. Showing me in the most real way, I have no clue what's best for me. And what I see is that as I connect with the truth of life and the truth of what I am, that allows for that sense of wholeness and gratitude. It doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. Because you have the only thing that you want. And you see, when you drop into the truth of what you are, that wholeness, and you're not chasing anything in the future, do you see how present you are to address the life that's actually happening? Which in its own way takes care of the future. I call this the sweetest surrender, where I acknowledge I don't know what the hell I'm doing in this life, but I'm here. And so this life that I am, in a way, just offers itself to life. It says, okay, what would you have me do? How can I serve? You see, because one of the fundamental confusions for the human being is they think they're here to get something. Like you came to planet Earth to get something. Which says what? You're missing something. Do you see that if you see yourself as missing something, you feel like you're missing something? You experience how you're seen. The human being is not here to get something. In the same way, the forest isn't cycling through its seasons to find a better version of the forest. Earth isn't circling the sun, traveling through an infinite space to improve itself. Each season is being the season so that the forest can be what it is. Life is life so that life can be life. Is that not enough? I'm going to ask you to really look at that. I mean, because like here in this moment, right now, you're alive. There's something breathing through you, not asking for anything in return. And it allows you to be. It's kind of a fucking miracle. And we're waiting for a miracle in the future? Come on. You see, the only thing that's missing is you imagining something's missing. Thinking that you need something that you don't have in order to be yourself. That's silly. Here you are. The human being is not here to get something. The human being is here to experience being a human being. which is to connect deeply with what you are, to connect deeply with others, which can only happen right now. And I'll tell you, if you want to connect deeply with anything, you have to let go of what you're trying to connect with. Like, for example, if I was sitting down with somebody, connecting with them, if I want or need them in the future, I can't connect deeply with them right now. Because connection is about authenticity. It's about sincerity. And if you think you need someone in the future, you won't go deep with them right now. You won't be vulnerable. You won't be real. Because it threatens your idea of the future. And you're essentially telling them, don't be honest with me. Don't tell me how you really feel. Don't tell me that you know the future is uncertain. Don't tell me you're scared. Don't tell me you're real. Help me protect my future image that I want to hide behind. So I don't have to look at the sincerity of my own being that's just like you. Through acknowledging the truth that the future is unknown. And saying, here we are, thank you. Because you see, in the most real way, the only thing you've ever worried about your whole life is that you wouldn't make it to this moment right now. You wouldn't get here and be whole and complete. And yet here you are. And probably nothing went the way you thought it was going to go. Cheers to the adventure. And we can see with a degree of certainty, nothing else will go the way you think it's going to go. So why try? Just acknowledge the truth. You don't know. Which in a very real way opens you up for the miracle to be the miracle. Because the more you pretend to know when you know you don't, you're essentially telling life, I don't need your help. I know what I'm doing. How's that going? All right, any questions? Or what do you want to talk about?
Do you have any plans for your future?
I have lots of plans. Well, next couple months anyway. But I just don't care.
What do you mean you don't care? You don't care if they come true or how things play out?
Yeah, it's irrelevant. It's fun. It's fun to plan.
And what does make you feel like not caring? It makes you feel light?
Well, look at this. The only reason you would stress or worry about anything in the future is because you think it holds your worth and value hostage. You think that there's something that can happen in the future that says you might not be lovable, that you might not be enough. And so we anxiously move forward trying to capture that so that we can be enough. And it fails every time. And you'll notice this in your own experience. When you're making plans and you're anxious, you think it has something for you. That it means something about you. Only to find out that it doesn't. And so make plans. Enjoy making plans. But it doesn't mean anything. And in this, you can move in that direction with a sense of joy that's open for things to change. And that's where the magic happens. Because if you hold on to a future outcome and you think that that's the prize, then you'll shut down to everything else that's happening. That might be life trying to expose a new way. Where life might be bringing support that you didn't know about. You see, this is the thing. What we're trying to heal is the disturbance. It's really the only issue. That disturbance is only created because you think you're going to find yourself in the world. That you're going to find something in the world that will mean something about you. You will not. You will never be able to capture it. The good news is because what you're trying to find, you already are. Trying to find wholeness. And you see, I'm just inviting you to maybe spark a curiosity into the potential that whatever you're looking for, you already have it, to save you some time. Yeah.
What can you say about sadness?
Beautiful. Well, what about it?
That's a good question. Maybe like sadness of like the inability to connect, or
Yep.
like for example, the image of the forest. It's like a very perfect image of like cycles, but like even in like the chaos you described, it's like it's normal.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, you're born into a forest, and the forest is like not even there anymore. But you know it's a forest.
You're born into a forest?
No, like for example, like the world. Like
Right.
you're describing like description of the forest is very beautiful. But if you're like born into a world where I don't know, you can't connect.
Right.
But you know like you want to connect.
Okay.
So it creates like a sadness or the feeling
Right.
of missing something.
Beautiful. But what you're saying is the sadness is that feeling of missing something, and that's very important to recognize. Let's say that sadness can only be experienced if you've experienced something beautiful, because that's what's missing now, right? And so sadness can only happen because beauty has been seen. So let's start there. The confusion that gives birth to sadness is you think that what you experienced, the beauty you experienced, was outside of you. And so you think you lost beauty. It's kind of like when you look at a sunset and you see the beauty of it. Do you realize that when you're having that experience and you feel that love and beauty, you're not experiencing something outside of you called a sunset. You're literally experiencing what you are. The love and beauty that's felt, where's that happening? Right? It's not out there. You're experiencing you. When the sun falls behind the horizon, if you get sad, you think the beauty was in the sunset outside of you. If you see very clearly that what you're experiencing is what you are, then there isn't loss, there's appreciation. And so, in this, the original energy of sadness is the same energy as beauty. It's beauty recognized. If you perceive yourself as separate from that beauty, which is in a way perceiving from fear, you go into loss. If you see it as what you are, wholeness, you experience appreciation and gratitude. It's like perceiving from fear or perceiving from love. And if you perceive from the sense of fear, it's just a confusion about what you are. And so the issue that gives rise to the missing isn't about something that's out there. It's just a confusion of the one that is experiencing, thinking we're separate from it. And here's what happens is, say you have a beautiful experience, and then you go into this, I'm separate and I lost it. What do? You start to shut down. Right? I'm never falling in love again. You start to take like a defensive attitude, which now pushes away a beautiful experience. When you see that it's what you are, and there's appreciation and gratitude, you say, yes, please. More of that. Right? I want to experience myself, which opens you up to connect more deeply. But the more you see yourself separate from what you're experiencing, the more you shut yourself down and push away the experiences that you desire. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You see, this is the power of what you are as a human being, as the source of everything. It's like all of the love that you experience in your life, you're not experiencing anything other than you. You're just experiencing you. In the same way, the love you feel for the sunset isn't really out there. You are allowing that to be seen. You're open. Because somebody standing right next to you could be looking at the same sunset, but they're seeing an argument with their mother last week in their mind. They're not present. They're not available to see. And so the one who is present and available to see, they will see. And you see, we can go into it by looking at your emotional mechanism. Probably one of the most misunderstood things about being human is that the human being thinks their emotions are responding to life. That our emotions are responding to what's happening. And they're not. They're responding to the way that you're seeing. See this? Your emotions tell you how you perceive. If you perceive yourself as separate, you feel like shit. You feel pain. If you perceive wholeness, you experience something that feels good. And you see, just like when you touch a hot stove, pain kicks in to get your attention. It's like no matter where you're at in the mind, no matter what you're thinking about, if you touch a hot stove, it brings you right back to the present moment. It says, hey, this is not in alignment with wellness. See, pain is an alarm to bring you back to wholeness.
And what about the traumas? Because this means also trauma. Because if you touch the oven, you get okay, easily saying it's gonna be our trauma, and this also happens a lot with us human beings since we were kids,
Right.
that we are open heart when we come to life,
Mhm.
and then little things just start to happen, like you're at school and you want to share something with a friend and he doesn't want your attention or something like this, and then you start to make a lot of traumas inside you, and that's how our society are right now, with many people expecting, and no one knows what's going on themselves, what are their traumas.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What about it?
so how to get in touch with yourself and be happy in the way that you don't, like I said, the happiness is inside ourselves, but I also think that happiness is when you share things, when you can do things with other human beings, and sometimes you are up to something and you are open for something, like a friendship or in the family, and sometimes also in a relationship, and you have a really good intention, but then like you want to be this person who is open, and then someone is really saying like, this can come with a knife and set in your heart, and then you have another trauma, and then it goes like all the time like this.
You will continue to experience the same trauma until you see what's actually going on. And when you see the truth of it, the trauma disappears because you see there's not really trauma. We create trauma where there isn't really trauma, but there's the experience of it. And so we keep running into these same patterns of pain so that we can see them and see what they really are. And that's how healing happens, like individually and collectively. It's like planet Earth will continue to have war until we understand what the hell's going on. Why do we keep putting ourselves in this situation? Or if you have a certain relationship pattern, it's the same thing. Why do I keep putting myself in this situation? And that's serving to wake you up. Essentially showing you that what you're looking for, you're not going to find. And that's why we keep putting ourselves in painful experiences, because we're trying to get something that isn't there. It's like if you're trying to get love from another human being, you will constantly be disappointed, which separates yourself from the love that you are, which is the trauma. And so in a very compassionate, gentle way, it's self-inflicted through a confusion, through looking for something that's not there, but it's also an opportunity to allow for collective healing. And what I mean by this, and we're not on retreat right now, so I'm gonna condense it as much as I can. Let's look at it this way. Life is life so that life can be life. In order for life to continue on and expand, it has to keep exposing itself. It has to keep seeing itself. That's how it grows. Another way to look at this is light has to expand. And the only way that light expands is into darkness. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in order for light to expand, in order for life to be life, there has to be the play of darkness for it to expand into. Because if there wasn't, then it just collapsed. It wouldn't function. And so, and I'm just telling a story about this to point, and so don't make a religion out of the story. All of the perceived darkness in play is simply something that the light hasn't yet seen. And when the light sees it, it's no longer dark. Not that it changes, but the way that it is seen changes. Like if we turned all of these lights off and there was no light, you'd start imagining monsters. right? You'd imagine things that aren't there to be afraid of. And then you turn the light on and you see that, oh, actually what's here in the dark is what's here when the light is on. Nothing changes. It's just I see it differently. I don't imagine monsters. And so the human being as a, say a source of light, comes into this dimensional experience and has to travel through some degree of darkness so that it can bring light to that darkness. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. This is why everyone can tell a shitty story about the past. Is because there's some degree of darkness that hasn't been seen yet. But when you see the entirety of the experience, when you illuminate it, you see that there's nothing to argue with. You see a sense that all is well. Everyone has that to a certain degree, yeah? There might still be things that we have argument with, and that's fine. But you know those experiences where you're like, no, fuck that. And then some time passes and you go, oh, never mind. Wait, it's not what I thought it was. It was actually here to serve. And so when you see it from that perspective, there's a love that now flows into that dark place that now helps the collective see that dark with more love, which is the light expanding. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so whatever it is that we see as trauma is simply an opportunity for love to expand. And the way that it expands is one's actually willing to look at it. But the difficulty that we have as human beings is we want to look at it from a very biased perspective. One-sided. You know that feeling? Mm. Or it's like, no, I'm right and they were wrong.
The ego.
Yeah. We want to protect our imaginary sense of self-importance when we look at things, and so we don't fully look at them. We look with an agenda to protect who we think we are, rather than laying that down and opening ourselves up to hear both sides of the story. Because when you see both sides of the story, you'll see that everyone's actually looking for the same thing. And then we hug and say, I'm sorry. I love you. Mm-hmm. Sorry for the misunderstanding. And that's what happens. It happens within the one, the individual, and then it has an opportunity to happen on the surface. Because again, it's a reflection of the one relationship. And so as it happens within you, you now see it out here with others. And so that's why you're constantly seeing the reflection that you're having, is because light is trying to expand. And this life isn't about anything other than that. But when the human being confuses this life, saying that it's about getting to the future, then you ignore what's happening. You see what's happening, the truth of what's happening, as an obstacle to getting to the future. And this is what delays the process. Which is just simply saying you trying to be you, rather than opening to light.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So, when we leave here today and we take away lessons from you, should we not try to implement any of those lessons? Would that be getting in the way of the truth of what's happening in the present?
I recommend forgetting everything you think I said.
I've already made one note. Should I delete it from
Yeah.
my phone?
Yeah.
All right.
Because nobody here understands anything that I'm saying.
Are you included?
No. I'm only talking to myself.
What the fuck? No, you're...
Well, listen to this.
Yeah.
Listen. If I say one word, everybody in here hears something differently. If I say the word God, some people freak out, other people say, oh, thank you. Nobody hears what I'm saying.
We hear what you're saying, but we interpret it differently.
You are hearing you hearing. You're not actually hearing anything outside of you. It's like everyone here might be looking at me, but nobody sees the same thing. So everyone sees what they're seeing, which is their creation. Everyone's seeing themselves. Which is why I can sit here and just be incredibly honest. Because I know I'm only just being honest with myself. And that feels amazing. Which is to give you back to yourself and let you see how you see, let you hear how you hear, and not need anything from you. Because if I needed you to understand me, then I'd be frustrated. Because it's impossible.
So you don't need us to understand you, and we don't need you to understand.
Because it's impossible. It's literally impossible. Do you know that frustration when you feel like you need someone to understand you? And then you think that they do, and then you find out they don't?
So why are we sitting here?
That's a great and that, my friend, is the answer. For the sake of being alive. For joy. There's the answer. Why are we here in life? Enjoy what you are. Because no one understands. No one even sees you. And you see, this is the big concern. You think other people thinking about you has anything to do with you. And it's just irrelevant. It's like if you go into an ice cream shop and you decide not to get vanilla, vanilla doesn't give a shit. Any thoughts you have about vanilla isn't about vanilla. It's about your experience with yourself. And so whatever you say to vanilla, you're literally talking to yourself. Vanilla's wholeness is untouched by anything you think, say, or do. See, this is why
You're amazing. You're amazing.
It's just a sweet question.
He's not going to teach us anything.
it's a great question, man.
You are teaching yourself.
Yeah, it's all you.
That's
You're
exactly
receiving
it.
from the mind. You're not receiving from the heart.
You see, this is the real freedom to be you. Because look at all of the difficulty in being you. It's because you believe things are there that aren't there. Thinking that somebody's opinion about you is about you. And so recognize that any violence that gets expressed out here isn't actually about them. And you can flip that around and see that when people are unkind to you, you are just seeing what's going on the inside. It's not about you at all. You see that? Do you see how that dramatically changes your dance with that person? Because if you take their violence personally, guess what you do? Return violence for violence. If you see the heart of the matter, you put an end to the violence and you say, I'm sorry.
Question.
Yeah.
What if you see the violence, but you don't see the heart of the violence?
Then it will keep showing up until the heart of it can be seen. Because in a real way, and hear me lightly here, from my experience, I could say in a way of describing that violence doesn't exist in the world that I perceive. Because in order for there to be violence, there has to be two. There has to be separation. You have to see one thing attacking something else that it's separate from. Right? So you see two. It's almost like watching lightning strike the trees in saying the lightning's being violent. But that's your creation. Really, the lightning and the tree are one. Do you see that the lightning isn't inherently violent to the trees? That's a man-made concept that says one thing is doing another thing to another thing, but they're not actually two things, it's just one thing. And so man sees violence because he sees violence in himself. And so the opportunity is to question the violence you think you see. Because it's like if somebody comes at me with violence, I don't see violence, I see a heart that's hurting.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't see me as being attacked, which dramatically changes the interaction, like on an energetic level. Because if you see violence, guess what? You're giving energy to violence. So you feed that creation. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's all perfectly allowed. But as life happens, what you think you are seeing is what you give life to. And so you see more of that. It's like if you're walking down the street and you see a coin on the ground. One person says, "Oh man, I'm so worthless, it's just a coin." They give life to that. Or another person says, "Fuck yeah, man, a coin. That's abundance right there." They give life to that. You see, but nothing's actually happening. There's literally nothing happening. But what do you see? And what you see is what you end up giving energy to, which becomes your experience. And so as you begin to recognize that inherently there's nothing happening outside of you, you get to determine what you see. And the pain that you're going to experience is when you see yourself as separate. And so when you experience emotional pain, just like physical pain, it's trying to get your attention. You know when you're experiencing emotional pain and you can't even think straight? It's like you can't even function in life? That's like the pain that says, no, come back to the moment. It's trying to get you to come home to see how you're seeing. Because the way that you're seeing is not in alignment with the resonance of your heart. And so life's literally trying to stop you. Because you're just going to keep creating nonsense. And so it's the most compassionate thing to feel emotionally terrible. And so you know, like when you stub your toe and it hurts, that's life saying, "Hey, can we look at this? Something happened here. We need to make sure, it's not infected or any of this to continue on our wellness." So can you recognize a gratitude inside of you that says, "Oh, thank you for that pain"? Because do you see the pain's not even about you? It's just the body. The body's responding. It's not personal at all. And you can find this place of gratitude that says, "Thank you for that. Thank you that there is this thing called pain." Now, the problem with emotional pain is people take it personally. They think it's about them, which does what? Compounds the pain. Makes it worse. But when you open yourself to it, which is to not run from it, but to say, "Okay, here I am. What would you like to show me?" Then you get to see how you're seeing. You'll start to see how you're seeing you're not enough in all of these circumstances. Oh, this means this about me, or this means that about me, or this person did that. All of these ideas, which aren't true, which are saying essentially that you're not supported. And so you get to sit with that feeling and bring clarity to it, bring light to it. Say, what do I think I know that I really don't know? What am I holding on to protect my sense of self-importance that's separating me from everyone else? Right? The pain invites the humility. It's like if you look at any suffering that you've been through, that's essentially what has happened. Is you came back to this place of, I don't really know. And so you let go. And in the letting go, you started to feel better. And so it doesn't have to be a huge process. Let it do what it's there to do. In other words, chill the fuck out. Relax. Because you see, there's in the same way that everything in the forest is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, it's in a way it's all divine. No matter how you see it, no matter what your argument is, it's all doing what it's doing to support life, the beauty that is life. Everything that's moving inside of you is perfectly placed to support the truth of what you are, which is the truth of what you desire most. It's all intimately intertwined. And you can see the difficulty is you think you have to do it. It's like waking up and realizing, oh, it's up to you to breathe today. That'd be a disaster. The more you try and breathe, the more difficult breathing becomes. The more you try and live life, the more difficult life becomes. So relax.
I wanted to know how is it to know that there's so less people trying to get in touch with themselves, and by knowing so much already, how is to live? Sometimes it's loneliness. I don't know. Maybe it's like because I have the feeling sometimes I'm reading a lot. I'm getting after so many things at the same time, and I sometimes feel like there are so less people doing the same, and you feel sometimes like, oh my gosh, I want to save the whole world, because the world's about love, and you want also to do this, to make happen. So how can you also be happy knowing that things are not going that fast, maybe like you are doing, or
I don't think about any of that. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, heaven is already here. Everything is going exactly how it's supposed to be going. Everyone else is right where they're supposed to be. And so, yeah, it's done. And so just enjoy yourself. Really. Because you see, problems are not problems. They're opportunities for you to be you. It's like one person could look at the world and say, there's 10,000 problems. I'm not going to go outside. Another person says, there's 10,000 opportunities to share the love that I am. Pick one that resonates and go to work. You see, everything that appears to be not enough or lacking in any way is an opportunity for you to bring light. And there's an abundance of that. Everywhere. Not in some big, grandiose, self-important way, but in the most sincere way. In a present moment way, where you let life show you. I know what should be created over another thing. I can recognize a sincerity of my heart that wants to play in certain ways, but I have no clue of what's best. And so I might put these things out there, but we'll find out. There's just no weight around them. Because again, the only thing that's going to happen, and hear this, the only thing that's going to happen in this life is I am going to see how I see. Regardless of what happens.